Hi everyone, welcome to chapter 4. We're moving into using user input. So this particular chapter will introduce text boxes where when your program goes live, it allows the user to input information. So what's different, another thing that's different is now you're gonna have to take that information and process it and produce output. So this particular program is focused on a bike rental GUI. So this GUI will go live and allow a user to input how many bikes they want to rent. And then you will take that information, process it, and calculate how much that person needs to pay for those bikes, and then print on the form how much they owe. Okay. So those are the key things that we're going to do for this particular program. So remember, this is going to be my last, well, yeah, chapter 4 is the last chapter where I create the GUI from scratch, step by step, because at this point I think you guys understand where your toolbox is, how to add the objects, how to rename them, how to double click on them and get the coding window so that you can write your code. The only thing is just be mindful that every chapter will introduce a new object. And this particular chapter is introducing a text box. So just keeping those types of things in mind as you're progressing forward. Sometimes you will probably use everything that you've learned thus far to make your program functional, and sometimes you may not use certain things. So just as you're creating, you're learning which objects you're going to use to perform whatever task you're wanting to perform. And in particularly each chapter, whatever is in that chapter, generally we're going to use it, especially for your chapter case that you're create. Okay. So let's go ahead and move into, I'm going to move a little quickly with a couple things because I think you guys kind of have the idea as far as your labels and buttons and picture objects. So I'm going to go ahead and create a label heading using the appropriate naming criteria. And we're going to change the name. We're going to change the font. And this time I'm just going to use a font that I like as opposed to what the book wants me to use. And we're going to do 14 and bold and okay. All right. I know it's a little girly. We're going to format it in the center of the form. As you guys recall, I'm going to move it up just a little bit, and then I'm going to format it again to be in the center of the form. Okay. And a lot of times you'd be able to look at the actual image in the textbook and just create it based on just looking at that. Okay. All right, so the next thing we will have is our label that's going to go right under that. Okay, so you're going to produce another label that's going to indicate what the cost per bike is. So we're going to go ahead and change the name, LBL cost heading. We're going to call it label cost heading. And then we're going to move into text, $sign, and then this is going to actually have the cost, but we're not going to include the cost yet because we have to start getting into variables, which we're going to talk about a little further. So this is going to say x.xx per bike for 24 hours. So this is how much we're going to indicate how much they have to pay per bike. All right, so we're going to make this a little bigger so it's readable. So go to font. I'm going to use a different text for that. Regular, and then let's make it 12. Okay. we're going to center it. Let's click on it again to get the format. Center in form horizontally, and now it's centered. All right. All right. It's a little longer than my heading, so I'm gonna go and change the font and take it down one size. It's okay. This is just me and my my little pet peeves. I'm gonna take it one more down, one more, and I'm going to center it again. And so, okay, now I like that better. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and add another label. And what that label will be is for the number of bytes. It's just gonna be a heading just to kind of let the user know what information will appear here. So it's just gonna represent a label for the data that will be right next to it. So let's go ahead and change the name, LBL. Let's call it number of bytes. Oh, no spaces, sorry. LBL, number of bytes. All right, let's call it label on the end, just to make sure we're indicating that it's a label. And then the text is gonna be number of bike, sorry, it's my cell phone. Number of bike rentals. And a colon, all right, because it's gonna be a heading. All right, so I'm not gonna change the font yet. I'm gonna change all of them at the same time. So let's go ahead and add our next label, which will represent our total cost label. So let's go ahead and give it a name, LBL, total cost label, which means it's going to represent the label that's just letting us know this is the total cost that you will have to pay. All right. And this one will basically say total cost of bikes rented with a colon. I think I'm missing my D on the end. All right. And then also we're going to have a label that's going to depict the cost. So go ahead and put that here, which is going to be your label that's going to let it know. And notice that we're doing these separate. This is going to be the label, and this is actually going to be the amount. So this value will change every time it's being used by the user. So that is important that you're creating them separate, okay? So LBL, and let's call it total cost because it's going to be whatever the person has to pay. And then for that, we're going to use a $sign and an 888.88, which will make sure we have enough space to hold the cost, just to kind of indicate what it would be. Okay. And then now we're going to go ahead and change the font for these. So let's go ahead and click on the first one, Control, and click the other two, and we're gonna change the font and make it consistent with the last one that I think I did the Mongolian, and we're gonna do regular, and we're gonna do 9, and we're gonna say okay. Okay. And now we're gonna just use our snap lines to kind of line it up. Okay, so I did the blue line so that it'll be aligned with each other here, okay? And I'm gonna move it up a little bit just to make sure that we have enough space. And then notice that the red snap line is aligning it, okay? So just wanna make sure that we have that, all right? So the next thing that's gonna go here is our text box. So that's the new object that we're adding, okay? So we're gonna go ahead and add the text box here. And then we're going to resize it to the point where they can enter digits, and so it doesn't have to be as big. And then we're going to align it here. Notice the blue snap line. We're going to align it with our cost heading there, just to kind of keep it simple. Okay. Now let's come over here and give it a name. So this particular acronym will be TXT to indicate your text box. And this is going to be number of bikes because it's related to the number of bike rentals label. And this is going to indicate how many bikes they want to rent. All right. For this particular one, we're not going to have anything inside of the text box. So we don't have to change the text property at this point. So we'll just leave that alone for now. So right now the text property should not have anything in it. And then the next thing that we're going to do is let's go ahead and do our picture. We're going to go ahead and add our picture box, and based on the image, the picture box is going to be at the very bottom of the image. And if you want, you can just basically use these sizing handles if you want and just align it here, or you can use the dimensions that's given inside of the text box and change the size. For me, sometimes I like to just eye it a little bit and resize the way I like. Okay, so let's go ahead and add that image. So we go into Canvas in our student data files, chapter 4, and we're going to download bikes. We're going to download that, and we're going to come back here. Remember, we're following the same steps. Oh, look, guess what? I forgot to give it a name. PIC. Let's just call it bikes. All right. And then now let's go ahead and import our image. Import, go to downloads, bikes, open. Okay. We only have one image this time, and it looks like it fits pretty good. So no need to do the stretch image unless you just want to. Let's click save. And let's now add our buttons. We're going to have 3 different buttons. So let's go ahead and add our calculate button. So let's go ahead and add this button, which is going to calculate the cost. So when this button is clicked, it's going to calculate the cost of the bike rental, depending on the information that the user entered. So let's call it BTN, and we're going to calculate cost. We're going to call it calculate cost. And on the actual button, we're going to change the text to calculate cost. So it's actually going to read calculate cost. Let's extend it so we can see cost. All right. Now we're going to go ahead and add our second button. This button is going to be our clear button, which means this is going to clear out everything that the user has entered and allow them to start over, or allow the next person to come on and start submitting their order, however many bikes they want to rent. So this button is just going to say clear. All right. And then we're going to add one more, which is going to be our exit button. Okay. And we're going to call that BTN exit. And then the actual button is the text is going to say exit. And what we want to do is make them the same size. So since calculate cost is the largest one, we're going to conform these 2 buttons to this one. So click on calculate cost, click control, select your other 2 buttons, go to your format, make same size, and then go to format, horizontal spacing, make equal, format also, let's just say center it inside of the form. All right. And this is what you should have. You should have your buttons properly spaced. Of course, you can change back color. You can change different things like that if you like. For the most part, I think we're pretty much okay. All right, so let's save that and let's debug it. And then now you notice here, your cursor is here, allowing you to input information. So now the user can say, oh, I want 5 bytes. And what we're going to do is write code to calculate the cost and let the person know this is how much you will have to pay. Okay. And then we'll get the other buttons working properly. And we'll just close that. Okay. So let's start out with the easiest one, the exit button. Let's double click that. Notice that we're here inside of our program, and it has us inside of our exit button, and we all know inside of here, it's just gonna be closed. It is gonna close it for us. All right. So go ahead and put your comments so that you have your name, whatever information we've indicated before. This is the city bike rental project. And then the day. All right. And then you can proceed with the rest of the coding. So we have our comments. Now, I'm going to kind of walk through this step by step to make sure you're understanding. Now, whenever you are writing programs with any type of code, you're going to be receiving data from the user. All right. So you want to make sure that you're setting up your program to process that data. So what that means is you're going to have values that have to be stored inside of variables. Variables are just basically allocated space that hold information. But what happens is you have to determine the type of information that you're attempting to store. So if you're going to store a name, and make sure you're reading through your textbook. I'm going to make sure you review the second video that's provided that kind of breaks them down a little bit more. All right. So that when you're writing this code, you understand what's happening. All right. So we have to indicate what type of information that we're storing. So in this particular program, we'll be retrieving a integer value from the user, and the user will enter how many bytes. And it's not going to be a decimal because you can't have 2.5 bytes, right? So you want to make sure that they're entering a whole number and you're taking that information and converting it and using it properly. All right. And I say convert because remember this, any information that's entered inside of the text box, the program is going to return it as a string, and we can't calculate or conduct any type of calculations using a string. So that string value will have to be converted to a number, which is going to be that integer. So make sure you go back and read through the book and look through the other video that I provided. Okay. All right. So in all of your programs, the very first thing you should have here is your option strict on. This here will ensure that your program doesn't automatically convert your types for you. You're going to tell it no. So you have that on. So you want to make sure that it is not converting anything. Okay. Now looking at this, I did spell rental wrong. I'm missing the L, but that's okay. We're not going to change anything now because that will cause problems with our entire program. So little things like that, just leave it alone. Okay. Because Visual Studios, it's so complex and it will cause issues with your program. So don't stress about it. If you spelled it wrong too, it's totally okay. I know what you were trying to say, right? All right, so the very first thing that we're going to do is create a constant variable. Remember, this variable is not going to change. That's why it's called constant. It's going to be a constant value. But the thing is, we're going to create this value at global level, class level, which means if I create it here, that means I can use it anywhere inside the class, anywhere in here, no matter what, because I've basically declared it at class level. However, if I declared it inside of this exit button, it will only be accessible inside of that exit button. It will only be local to that exit button, okay? And that's not what we want. We want it to be global. So remember the syntax we talked about as far as your constant. So your constant COST, and then the syntax for that goes in front of it is the _C, and then the type, all right, which is a decimal, is gonna be a decimal value, and the name of your variable, price per byte, because that's related to the count of value that is going to hold, as is a decimal because it's going to be a decimal. And then we're going to have 995, and you're gonna put a D on the end to ensure that it's not a 0, it's a D, a letter D. We're gonna make sure that it's consistent and firm with the 995 as a decimal value and not attempting to convert it to anything or use it for anything else. It's gonna be set with the D, okay? All right, so the next thing that we're gonna do is go ahead and write the code for our calculate button. So let's come back here, double click our calculate button. We're ready to write code for that. So notice it clicks here. Now, something I want to tell you, it doesn't matter that the exit button is first or whether the calculate button, it doesn't matter. As long as each of them have their own procedure, what will happen will be based on what the user does when this program goes live, and they enter there and whichever one they click first, okay? So it really doesn't matter, and it'll just go to that particular procedure and execute whatever is inside of that procedure. So don't stress if yours is in a different order, it's totally okay. All right, so the first thing we're gonna do is set it up to calculate the cost. So now what we have to do is create variables to hold all the information that we will be processing. Now, the very first thing that you'll be retrieving, just kind of process it based on what you'll be, what your program will be doing, what your form will do once it goes live. And when it goes live, it's going to be waiting for the user to enter how many bytes he or she wants to rent. So that particular value has to be stored. You have to store these values. You have to store the data in order for you to use it. And what did we say that the text box returned the value as? A string. So we need to create a string variable that's gonna hold that value. All right, so we're declaring a string variable here. And then the next thing we're gonna do, once we take that string value, we're gonna have to convert it to a number so that we can use it. So, but we still need a variable to hold that converted number. So now we need an integer variable. So we're declaring that, okay? And then once we calculate the total, we're gonna need to store it in something, in a variable, so that we can print it and process it, all right? So decimal total cost. So it's gonna be a decimal value, okay? And then what's gonna happen is now we have to indicate how it will process this information. So the very first thing is we needed to take the value that's in the text box and store it. So now we're gonna update the string number of bytes variable, assignment operator, and we're gonna tell it to take what's in the text box and store it. So txt number of bytes dot text. Remember, the text property is actually wasn't there. So because we didn't begin with anything, there was nothing there. Once the user enters a value, now there's something there for the text property. So this statement here allows us to grab whatever's in the text box, take that value and store it inside a string number of bytes, all right? So if the user entered 5, it returned it as a string and it's stored inside of string number of bytes. But remember, a string is like text, so we can't calculate text. So we have to convert that value to a number. So now we're going to update int number of bytes, use our assignment operator, and then we're using the convert class, and then we're gonna use our toInt32 procedure, and you're gonna pass it the variable that holds the value that you're wanting to convert. Which one holds the value? the string number of bytes, okay? Uh-oh, I think I entered down too quick. All right, so now it's gonna take whatever the user entered, convert it to an integer value. This is gonna convert it for you. And then it's going to store it inside of int number of bytes. Some students use to int 64. It's totally okay, either or. It's still gonna convert it to an integer value for you, okay? Now we're ready to calculate the cost. So let's update decimal. And something I want you to notice. Notice here, I don't know if you noticed when we were creating it, these had a green squiggly line under it, just like this. That means it was unused. It has not been initialized. You haven't stored anything there. And as you can see, it's the only one we haven't stored anything yet. So let's go ahead and update total cost, which will basically, how will we calculate that? You would take the CD, the constant value, which is the cost, $9.95. All right, that class level variable, because you created global level, we can use it anywhere inside of our program, okay? Multiply it times the number of bytes the user said he or she wanted. All right, once it does that, it has done a calculation. Now we need to inform them of their costs, what they will have to pay. And in order for us to do that, we have to update our label. So make sure you use the right label. So remember, we had a label cost heading, a label heading. We had label total cost, label total cost label. So we put label on the end to indicate that was just the label. So that means we're going to use the label total cost here. All right. And we're going to update that text for that. Okay. So what we're going to update it to, what do you think? All right, if you recall, the total cost label had the $ and the 8888. So instead of it being that, we want it to be updated to whatever the user is having to pay. So we're gonna take that decimal total cost, and then you have to use two-string procedure to have it print the way you want it to print to the form. And now you have to indicate how you want it to be formatted. Please look at your table in your textbook to go over different formats. You have currency, which is a C. You have general, which is a G. You have fixed, which is an F, and you can indicate how many decimal places. So if you want 2 decimal places, F2. If you want 3, F3. You can, by default, with just the F, it would be 2. If you want a % sign with it, you will use P. So just looking through that table to make sure you're comfortable. And because we're dealing with cost, of course, we're going to use currency. So we're going to use C here. Okay. So let's go ahead and just see what we have here. All right. So notice we can enter 10. Calculate cost, and it changes. Clear it. Oh, we haven't done clear yet. But if you change it, change the cost. All right. But we're gonna write clear here. We're gonna write the code for clear. So when we clear it, we can clear everything out, and then we can start over. Okay. And then notice here we have to update this value. There needs to be a value here. It should not be XXX. All right. And we can click exit because we already wrote the code for exit. Okay. So that's where we are so far. All right, so let's go ahead and write our code for our clear button. All right, we'll come back here, double click clear. So what do you think we want to clear out? The user entered text in the text box, so we want to clear out the text box. The cost, the total cost label gave a cost, so we want to clear that out. It shouldn't have a cost there anymore because we're starting over. So in order for us to clear out our text box, we have to access our text box. So TXT, number of bytes, we only have 1. Dot clear. So you're using the clear procedure that will clear it out. Okay. And then we're wanting to empty out the label. So the label total cost dot txt equals just empty quotation marks. This is null, N-U-L-L. That means a null string, which means it'll just be empty, won't be anything there, okay? And also what we want to do is set the focus in our text box so that it'll go back. You know how when you're, I'll show you when I execute it again. So we're gonna set, oops, we're gonna set the focus, hold on. So focus procedure, notice the parentheses, these are both procedures. So we're accessing the code inside of the Visual Basic class to just do whatever it is that you're supposed to do or you have it set up to do. So clear it out, set the focus. So let me show you what I mean. So this means the focus is set. It's set in the text box as soon as it loads. So it's already set up okay, all right? So when we come here and we put to calculate cost, we click the clear button, it clears everything out and it still set the focus there to make sure the user goes back there, all right? And then we can basically do it again, clear it out, exit, okay? Hopefully that was pretty simple enough. All right, so now what we want to do is we want to clear out this. We don't want that to be we don't want that to appear when the form loads, and we don't want these X's here when the form loads. So when you want to modify what happens when your form loads, you will double click your form. So now it takes you into your procedure for your entire form, what you want to happen when that form loads. Okay, sorry. Everybody want to blow me up when I'm trying to record. All right, so first thing first, we're gonna update this label here. All right, so remember what we call it. Let's just go see what we called it to make sure we're accessing the correct label. So the LBL cost heading. So we're gonna update the text for that, the text property. So LBL cost heading dot text, because we're updating that. Uh-oh. And you're probably gonna catch yourself doing that to TXT, but it should be TEXT, all right? And then we're going to have it print the cost and then per bike for 24 hours. So here, what variable holds the cost? If we scroll back up here, this is the variable that holds the set cost. And because it's class level, we can use it anywhere. So underscore C, and there it is. And then we're gonna use concatenation, which joins two things together. So we're gonna use the concatenation symbol to join it with this text, per bike. Per bike. I can't remember what we're supposed to say. Oh, per bike for 24 hours. Per bike for 24 hours. Okay. All right. In the closing. And then enter. We have a red line. Oh, I accidentally erased the ends up. There we go. All right, so, and then the next thing that we want to do is, remember, clear out that label that has the cost, the total cost. We don't want the 888 to appear. So now we're gonna set it to null, which are empty, empty quotation marks. And we want to ensure that, even though it's already set, we want to make sure that when it loads, the text box is where the focus is. So your cursor will be inside of that particular box. Okay. All right, let's save that. Executed. And we'll check out what we have. All right, so now look at this. Look at this. It's bunched together. Also, there is no dollar sign. It just doesn't look appropriate, right? So we need to fix that. But notice that we do have the cost here label gone. It's empty. Okay, so let's exit out of here. All right, so remember, for formatting, we have to use .toString and with the C to make it currency so that it'll have the dollar sign, right? And then because strings print whatever is inside of the quotation marks, we need an extra space here so that it'll give us the space between this cost here and this text here. So we needed that space, okay? So notice now we have our cost with the dollar sign, we have the space so it's not jumbled together. We input 10, we calculate the cost, it tells us how much we owe, we clear it out, and we do it again, calculate cost, clear it out, and we exit, okay? Hopefully that was helpful in understanding your variables a little bit more. Make sure you look over, make sure you watch the chapter or overview that I provided that just kind of goes through the slides to give you an idea of what you're reading in the chapter and what you're seeing and what we'll be doing, okay? So take a moment and get a little bit of practice and let me know if you guys have any questions and we'll talk soon.